there was a time in my life when I thought that better habits would fix me. Better planners, better morning routines, better consistency, better productivity frameworks. But no matter how optimized my life got, something underneath the surface of all of that just kept on breaking, basically. Like my discipline was high, my willingness was high, my output even was strong, but my trust in myself was fragile. And everything felt all the time like it was right about to break. And this would often led to habits of self-sabotage that would actually undermine those systems and lead to inconsistencies or sabotage the results that I would have from the consistency that I did have. And it really wasn't more strategy that I needed. This is what finally actually clicked for me after years of being in this loop, of this cycle of trying hard, being consistent, and sabotaging my own results. Right? Here's what clicked. I did not need more strategy. I did not need more self-affirmation. I did not need more self-love. I did not need more rest, even. What I needed was self-esteem. Not the soft, like affirmational kind of self-esteem that you've probably heard of, but like a reliable, hard, structural kind of self-esteem. So in this video, I'm going to show you basically the shift from self-esteem as a hack to self-esteem as a system, as well as the personal metrics that I started tracking and how that change really multiplied my results and removed burnout from the equation of my life. Not completely, but it reduced it to the point where I could actually function. So what we're going to focus on, like learning through all of those things, is basically how I went from like a performance-based self-worth to actual structural self-trust, right? So when it gets to how you actually implement this in your life, this will be things like why habits and hacks and things like that you get from typical self-help literature or videos usually stall when you lack the internal credibility beneath the surface. How I turned self-esteem into a measurable operating system, as well as, some of these specific tools that I used and how this system really improved my relationships and my discipline and my long-term clarity. So just to zoom out, I guess I'll give you, I'll share a little bit about my low point, where I was very high. I had a high self-concept, what some people would call a grandiose self-concept, and very low execution, or very inconsistent execution, right? And my low point actually wasn't burnout. My low point wasn't burnout. My low point of my life was when I felt like I was helplessly, chronically self-sabotaging, and it was destroying my life, and I had destroyed my life. I had this inflated sense of self still, even though there was all this destruction around me, but none of that structure to justify that sense of self. And I told myself that I was destined for more and I was made for more, but I was torching everything that I touched, opportunities and relationships and habits and momentum. Not because I didn't know what to do, although there was definitely an element of that, but because I didn't really have the nerve to face the truth, the discipline to change my life, or the integrity to stick with it, because I didn't have something beneath all those things. I couldn't trust my own voice, right? Every plan that I made, it just felt like a bluff. It felt completely hollow. Every commitment that I made felt temporary because I didn't have any credibility with myself. And that's what broke. Not my output, but my belief that I was someone worth aligning with. And no habit stack can fix that. And so here was my shift. My shift was to self-esteem as a core system. So the turning point really was not like tactical. I started doing this and implementing this system, and then everything started working, right? The shift for me wasn't even like a cognitive realization. It was something deeper. It was something existential. The shift to self-esteem was an existential shift. So I remember searching for resources on self-confidence. I knew I had a confidence issue. And I have another video that explains the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem. But the language I had for it at the time, before I knew really about self-esteem, was I just thought I really lack confidence. And I would really like to get confidence because I need to move forward, but I feel like I can't. And that feeling of inadequacy, that deep feeling of inadequacy, felt like a weight around my neck. I did not know how to overcome that and how to move forward and how to motivate myself and how to envision my future and commit my actions as someone who believes they are capable of doing this, as someone who believes they are worthy of the rewards of living in a worthy way. So it's funny. I read a book by a really awesome creator named Denise Duffield Thomas, Denise DT, called Get Rich Lucky Bitch, because I thought I had a money problem, and kind of did. But I really recommend that book, Get Rich Lucky Bitch. I think it's sort of like oriented towards women more as an audience, but I loved it. I would recommend it to men and women. Denise DT. So she's awesome, but that's neither here nor there. She cited a book by a guy named Gay Hendricks. Gay Hendricks has a book called The Big Leap. The Big Leap is kind of about acclimating yourselves to higher and higher levels of success. So it was kind of inching towards this concept of self-esteem, but wasn't quite hitting the nail on the head for me, although I still benefit from and have revisited these books, and they're super helpful. So definitely recommend Denise DT, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and Gay Hendricks, his book, The Big Leap. Both are really helpful self-help books. So Denise DT cited Gay Hendricks in her book. Gay Hendricks cited Nathaniel Branden in his book, The Big Leap. And so I thought, Nathaniel Branden, okay, whatever he said, whatever the quote was in that book, I thought, I have to read this guy, Nathaniel Branden. So I find his book, really his flagship work on self-esteem is a book called Honoring the Self. And I remember listening to the audiobook, and I really can't recommend this audiobook enough. It's on Audible. It's narrated by Branden himself. And I remember listening to Nathaniel Branden, his book, Honoring the Self, and just stopping cold when I heard him say this line, this quote. He said, "Self-esteem is basic to survival. It is the conviction that you are competent to live and worthy of happiness." This concept, so that was life-changing for me. This concept that self-esteem, it's not just another philosophical idea. It's not just some luxury. It's not just another tool in your tool belt. It is like the rationale of your very survival as a biological organism. That was it. That one sentence unraveled everything I'd been told about what it meant to be human, sacrificing for others, living for a higher purpose, connecting with other things, developing a conscious connection with the transcendental realm of existence. Like whatever reason you could come up with to justify why you wake up and why you move forward in the morning, all of that went out the window. And finally, for the first time in my life, something made sense to me. None of those reasons mean anything or make sense at all unless you have this concept of self-esteem. Self-esteem is the foundation for any other reason you might come up with to live. That was it. If you think that your purpose is to serve other people, then you have to have the confidence and the sense of self-efficacy that you can perform in that domain, and the self-respect that you could that you actually are worthy of showing up and adding value, right? Everything, even the most self-flagellating or self-giving reasons that you could, or self-minimizing reasons you could come up with to live, are all still rooted in self-esteem. Oh, my existence is to worship the Creator God. That assumes that you have some intrinsic value that imbues that activity with worth, that it imbues the act of worship with worth, right? Like everything that you, in every way that you might compromise or give up or abdicate your worth for something else, it still relies on self-esteem as this fundamental concept. So, because my belief system was not built for survival, at the time it was actually a very religious belief system. And it actually, like I actually realized I couldn't be religious in the way that I was and have self-esteem at the same time. That's a story for another time. But my belief system really wasn't built for survival. It was built on this assumption that I was inherently unworthy, that I deserve wrath, that goodness couldn't come from within me. And Branden wasn't offering like this soft alternative to that, right? It's like, oh, you can love yourself and still give yourself to others in the world. No. He was offering a structural contradiction to what I believed. He was saying, if you don't believe you belong in this world, nothing else can stabilize. And I realized that no amount of strategy or performance would work if the core assumption underneath was self-rejection. So I started building from there, not with hype or self-help, but with structure, with a system that did not care how I felt, only whether I was aligned. It was existential. Self-esteem is actually what allowed me to deconvert from Christianity, which again is another story, but it was that powerful of a concept for me. And my spirituality was hugely important to me. My relationship with God was hugely important to me. And I'm not saying you have to, if you're spiritual and you have a conscious connection with the divine in some way, I'm not saying self-esteem necessarily contradicts that. I'm just saying for me, the way I had internalized spirituality, it was in contradiction to what I now understood self-esteem to be. And I wanted self-esteem. So at that time in my life, for me, I had to make an exchange. I realized that I couldn't keep holding two ideas that were tearing me apart. The one that I deserved wrath and death, and one that I was worthy of trust. That I was fundamentally corrupted, and that I had the capacity to generate goodness from within. Right? You can't build psychological stability on a foundation that says your essence is broken and bad. You can't build self-trust if you believe your default state is guilt and shame. You know, what replaced it really wasn't, it wasn't ego. It kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. What replaced it was, like I said, it was structural. What replaced it was accountability. Not because I thought I was perfect, but because I knew I had the power to move forward in truth. And self-esteem gave me that internal strength to walk away from offerings of value that did not work for me, to say no without negotiation, to basically stop letting my low self-worth bait me into systems designed to keep me small. I didn't even have the confidence to believe that that people in my life were invested in me having a certain level of dysfunction and being small. And they wouldn't admit it. The truth is they probably don't even admit it to themselves. But the truth is there are people in your life who are invested in you having low self-image and being small. That's a fact. People who say they love you, people you think love you. They can want you to have a bad life and feel like a bad person and still think that they love you and not even know that they want that for you. But this just runs in a loop, right? And that loop really keeps me intact. It was existential. Self-esteem really allowed me to make these kinds of changes that I wanted in my life. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had enough internal clarity to walk away from a system that no longer aligned with me. And so self-esteem really gave me a habit of finding my own self-talk that was negative. Self-esteem made me feel really disgusted by that self-talk. I found that my negative self-talk was really distasteful. Like, I can't believe, honestly, even just reflecting on it now in this video, I can't believe how different what was going on in my head was then with what's going on in my head now. In the best way. I realized, I was grossed out by that voice in my head that was saying really negative things to me about myself. And I started noticing how much I manipulated myself, negotiated with my own integrity, and a bit down on my low self-esteem because it was familiar, because it was a system I was used to using. And honestly, that stopped. Not because I felt good, but because I could finally trust that I would survive the void. The void is really scary. And the truth is, I don't even always feel like that's true, even now. But now I have a structure that doesn't need me to feel like it's true. It just runs the check. And that's when I stopped optimizing for performance and started building from internal alignment. And it's a journey I still feel like a total white belt on. But what if I started treating self-esteem as something to instrument, not just feel? Not how do I feel about myself, but what's the integrity of the system I'm running? Right? So I built a loop. I started tracking promises I made to myself. I started measuring execution. I started auditing my misses, and I would build repair into my workflow. The point wasn't to be perfect. The point was to double down on what I felt was my specific internal strength, which was adaptability. The point was to build a system I could trust because it told the truth about me. And here are some of the things I started noticing when I implemented self-esteem in my life. And it's not really about building like a dashboard of all these things. It was about it's about training your mind to notice the right thing. Which promises, what kind of promises did I break and ignore? Which actions felt clean even when no one saw them? Where did I feel the friction between what I said and what I did? I didn't need a spreadsheet. I needed a mirror. That's what I needed. That's why I started tracking these things. The point isn't to capture all the data and turn yourself into a data engineer. The point is just to start noticing, right? And once I had that, my internal noise got quieter because I replaced the belief that what went on in my head matters to the belief that what I do matters. Clarity replaced energy, and integrity replaced performance. And that was a huge life change for me. And there was resistance. Part of me pushed back very hard. Part of me said, this is really excessive and egomaniacal. Just do the work. Don't overthink it, right? Just show up. Just be consistent. Just push through with your willpower, right? But the truth was, I'd spent years already trying to do that. And I still didn't trust myself. So there was something else going on. I was productive, but it was unstable and it was inconsistent. I was responsible in some ways, but completely irresponsible and unreliable in other ways. And full of these internal contradictions that justified me feeling really bad about myself. And once I realized that tracking these things wasn't control and it wasn't shame, it was clarity, I really stopped resisting it. If you use a simple app, you can use an app like Notion. Like I've gravitated really more towards using Notion. I use Notion for pretty much everything now, but I also still use the app that I used at the time, which is an app called Habit Kit. I have no affiliate link or anything. It's just the app that I use. It's called Habit Kit, and it's really simple visual app, right? Because it's not about optimization; it's about honesty. And so here's what happened when I tried to scale this self-esteem system to other parts of my life. And what does scaling mean? Scaling just means it works here, so I'm going to try to make it work here too. So if I were trying to tell you this story about how self-esteem changed my life and come off and present as very strong and give you this conversion story narrative, because I didn't have self-esteem before and now I do and everything's better. It's that would be a lie. And that would just be, it would be a lie. It would also be just kind of boring because that's not what happened. The truth is, when I started practicing the principles of self-esteem and implementing the structure of self-esteem in my life and cultivating self-efficacy and self-respect, my life got harder, more exposed, more demanding. I started taking on more responsibility. I didn't like that. I was more tired. People in my life exited at a rapid pace. I lost a lot of relationships, and it made me feel like I was doing something wrong because those people told me I was doing something wrong. Because I was working out all of these contradictions. And the truth is, I had been living a contradictory and dishonest life for so long that like I can't blame those people. They didn't have any trust in me either. I didn't have credibility with myself. I didn't really have credibility with anybody. So when I traded self-deprecating superstition for structural self-esteem, the cost was really clear. No more deflection, because you can handle it. No more evasion, because whatever it is, you can handle it. No fallback narrative. No one to blame. Just me. Everything became mine to carry. Self-esteem did not lighten the load. It just made me strong enough to carry it. And I know that sounds cliche, but that is what happened. The weight in my life increased. And I did not like it. But I enjoyed my life more. And when that self-esteem system held under load, everything started to scale with it slowly. Really, it took years for my life to improve. So that's kind of my story with it. And I'll post other videos that go into more detail about my story. But I just want to say that this is how self-esteem, this is what self-esteem is, and this is how it changed my life. You know, I highly recommend you getting that audiobook, Honoring the Self by Nathaniel Branden on Audible. And yeah, and you kind of take to heart some of the things that we've covered. You know, we basically looked at like how surface level optimization really might not be what you need, and it can't fix structural instability. We also looked at how I reframed self-esteem from emotion to execution and how I built a system to measure and repair it. So you now kind of have that blueprint, right? You can track your promises, log breaches of those promises, close your loops, and let the system tell you if you're in alignment. You know, Nathaniel Branden was right. And that's what I want you to walk away with. Nathaniel Branden was right. Self-esteem is basic to survival. I used to think really discipline would save me. But without trust, all it did was wear me down faster. Self-esteem is really not about liking yourself. It's about staying aligned with yourself long enough to build something real. And for me, it didn't just improve my life. It actually replaced a part of me that was trying to outrun collapse. Not with hope, with structure. And that's self-architecture. That's self-esteem.